everyone, this is iBusiness Talk with me, Ildikó Gulyáki. Today my guest is Máté Gulyás, who is a partner and CEO of an innovative startup in fields of Industry 4.0.
We never really planned to do that. Our skill set is building up data analytical infrastructure, so data pipelines, data platforms, and it turns out that there's a real demand out there to do this kind of thing. Of course, this whole big data and machine learning or AI hype or revolution have.
Sorry, let me just stop you for a second.
Yeah.
For those viewers who don't really understand these terms, would you be so kind to explain a bit more detail? What is artificial intelligence? What is the purpose and the sense of using big data? What is predictive analysis and things like that?
Actually, it's really interesting because when I got into data analytics, it was the big data hype, and there were data miners, data mining. But at the time, we started to call the same data scientists. So the data miners, now they are data scientists, and we call machine learning one part of the job, and now we call that AI. So AI or machine learning is the idea that if I have data, historical data, how my users behave on my website, I can collect that data, and a machine learning algorithm, which is very fancy, but most of the time is just mathematical functions and models inside. They can learn those patterns, that connection. So one good example is like credit scoring in banks. So usually when someone has a good credit score, so there's a high probability that they will pay back the debt. And those who are not, they have the same pattern. So usually people who never failed any credit, then probably they're not gonna fail the next one. But if you failed your last 3 credits, then probably you're not going to be the great customer of the bank. So these are very simple ideas, but now we don't have to do that by hand. The idea is that there's so much interesting patterns and connection in the data that we can maybe teach machines, but this is basically just creating mathematical models on the data. So we don't have to do that, the machines can do that. And if you can do that in an iterative fashion, these machines can learn the new patterns and so on. So it's kind of an innovative idea about how we can use our historical data. And the new thing is in the kind of neural nets, what is called the deep learning, which is a new hype, which is just another part of this machine learning. Neural nets also seem very fancy, but they are just maybe more complex mathematical models, but it's also just math. The revolution came because there are more and more fields where we can apply this. So there is an actual revolution or an actual new wave of applications, and that's because the hardware is better, so we have better computers, and we have more fields where we can apply it.
I see, and let me ask you something. How companies, how production or industrial factories or banks or automotive companies can use this predictive analytics and how they can transform their production and productivity?
Yeah, so data is very sexy now. The lean production or Six Sigma and those kind of methodology, they all have the same core idea to use data, measure, do something and evaluate based on data. So if I say that my sales is not good because, let's say, my customers are not getting the attention that they need from my, let's say, salespeople, I can measure that. How much time they spend with the customer. And I can measure the outcome. So I can have a hypothesis. You need to spend more time with the customer. But if I don't use data, that's just a hypothesis and that's your gut feeling, right? Which is either good or either bad. But the good thing that you won't realize that because you're not measuring the outcome and you don't know what's the impact. But if you use data, it's not hypothesis just anymore. It's not your gut feeling. It's actually like what happens in reality. You can measure that. If I spend more time, do I have a better outcome? We can ask that, okay, if I do this change, how can I measure the outcome? So what is the data that I will use to answer the question, did I help my business or did I maybe hurt my business? Because that can happen too. So actually using data is really important because you're not just feeling there's this hypothesis anymore. You can actually verify your ideas, and that's a really important thing. And the next step is, of course, how can I maybe go to the next level when I use machine learning, and that's a different topic. That's a harder topic. In industry, we have this idea called predictive maintenance. That in the past we had reactive maintenance, which is if the machine broke, I went to the machine and I changed some parts. It was preventive analytics when we maintain the machines so they don't break that often. So one of the big Hungarian telco company, what they do is they monitor the network, and if there is some breakdown, like a call is dropped, they immediately send out a message to the client that, hey, we know that your call is dropped and we understand that it's important to you based on your user profile. Let us offer a discount on the next month. So that helps with the user experience because you as a customer feel that company cares about you, and that's what they care about you. That's why they have that analytics in place to watch for your user experience.
Yeah, and I think better customer service or higher standards are not only important for big enterprises, but how about smaller companies in terms of being more productive or mitigating risks, and how can they handle waste management in terms of using this kind of predictive analytics?
I think any company needs to think about how they can use data, even if it's just measuring their business changes, because that's competitive advantage, and that's important for enterprises, but it's very important for small companies because your survival really hangs on how competitive I can be, how fast I can move, how I can make good decisions. And if you don't use data, how can you tell that you made good decisions? But it would be so great if we could somehow get the answer before we go out of business. And data is, I think, one way to do that. Without company size restriction or industrial restriction, data is important.
I know that you travel a lot. You speak many conferences in Los Angeles, in London. So what are the trends you see in terms of the fourth industrial revolution, aka Industry 4.0?
Industry 4.0 started in Germany, and it's a Europe kind of thing. I think 80% of the GDP created in the EU is industrial based, or it's actually industry.
Exactly.
And in Hungary, our GDP is 25-27 is also industry. Of course, Hungary is really big on the automotive industry. And this innovation in industry, being more competitive, lowering the prices, being more efficient in manufacturing, and solving the existing problems like labor shortage. With different names, this thing happens in Europe. We call Industry 4.0. China has its own version called Made in China 2025, which is a program. China is investing a crazy amount of money in being more innovative, to be a really good quality manufacturer in the States. So everyone really have some kind of project with it. In Hungary, we're actually not far from the cutting edge. Germany is probably one country where they are really progressed further than the rest of us, but we are right there because we are on the same platform in Europe, so it helps that we can share knowledge. So France, Italy, Germany, the Netherlands and Hungary Austria can share what they understand, so it's a good thing. Most companies are realizing that they need this. There's an additional thing in the car industry is that as the cars as we know are changing because electric cars are coming in, and it's a really interesting topic because electric cars has way less parts compared to combustion cars. So you don't have the whole oil system, you don't have a lot of things that you have in a combustion engine. And a lot of companies here in Hungary, their whole revenue comes from being a vendor for three big car factories in Hungary. So once those factories don't need as many parts, because now the things that they produce will be way simpler, like the electric car, then most of that businesses can go out of business. So they need to be competitive, they need to innovate so they can stay in business, and now they have the revenue to do that. So we have a good position. Also, we have a financial fundings coming in. So we have a good opportunity, not just the industry, everyone can benefit from a more efficient industry, right? And an industry which has a better quality, smaller environmental footprint. So we do this every day, but it's not just our future, it's I really believe that it can affect everyone.